We have been back a few weeks now from our month-long expedition to the Atacama of Argentina. We drove over 4,000 kilometers, several times very close to 5,000 meters of altitude.
4,999 meters.
God, for 1 meter we can't reach 5,000. Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I think it's time now to reflect on the whole trip, and I'd like to share with you how we prepared, how we planned. A lot of the things that were not shown in the videos are actually what makes the trip either a success or a failure, and particularly planning and preparation. So I'd like to share with you the practical aspects of the trip, but also the feelings we came back with. Hopefully this will all be interesting and maybe useful to you. So without further ado, let's get started. I use a variety of tools for planning such a trip. I research trails on Google Maps. Usually in the areas I'm interested in, I zoom in and look for cool places according to the satellite views and see if there's any trails that get us there. I use iOverlander as well, see if there's a report somewhere or someone who's camped in the area. I gradually build an itinerary in an Excel spreadsheet. For me, it's important to decide where I will camp because I like to be at the best locations late in the day for sunset light and early morning for the light as well. Sunrise and sunset are always the best times for photography and also for wildlife viewing. The Excel spreadsheet has the advantage that I can add up the mileage. Actually, the spreadsheet does it for me. And I can see how many days we'll be on the road, how much distance we'll cover, estimate our fuel consumption as well, and costs and so on. I load the waypoints in the GPS application in my cell phone. I use Map Factor Navigator. That makes it easier to navigate from one town to the other and often to find campgrounds in towns because here they are usually not signed, so it makes it a little difficult to find them. And for off-highway travel, I use Gaia GPS. It's possible to download offline satellite views and maps. The difficulty in off-highway travel is that it can be very difficult and next to impossible to find out in advance the trail conditions, mostly in remote areas. Until you get to the area and maybe talk to the locals or a local guide, it's next to impossible. And those trail conditions can change very quickly as well, depending on the weather. I mean, out in those areas like the Atacama, it rarely rains, but when it does, trails can get washed out in the space of a day. Even out here in Mendoza as well, in the mountains. The wind too can erase trails that are not very often used. So until enough vehicles drive the same areas again, trails will disappear. And GPS maps are not always that accurate. It happened to us a few times during the trip when the GPS was showing a track that wasn't there on the ground. So in those occasions we had to turn around and resume with the planning further. It's not wise in those remote areas to push on just because you want to follow the plan. You're very far out and out of reach of any kind of help. There's no cell phone reception. There's even the closest town that might be a couple hundreds of kilometers away usually has next to nothing in services. The two towns that were the biggest on the trip in the Atacama were Antofagasta de la Sierra, which has two gas stations, very basic. San Antonio de los Cobres has one gas station, very basic as well. These towns have only a few hundred people, so basically there are no services. Like you might find a little tire repair shop, but that's about it. A plan is only that, and changing it is always an option. Risking your life just to stick to the plan is simply foolish. Of course, in these very remote areas, we're far out of cell phone reception. The only way to contact the outside world for us is the spot messenger. Via satellite, every night I send a position report to a list of friends and family members. They receive it in an email with the link to a Google map. In the case of a life-threatening situation, the Spot Satellite Messenger allows us to send a special message that would call search and rescue. Our diet has become much simpler over the last few years, and that makes it a lot easier when we are on the road. We are both vegetarians now, and we generally avoid packaged food. We don't shop in supermarkets anymore. This works really well for us here in Argentina, and mostly in the small town and cities. People are used to shopping from local vendors, small vendors. Actually, most of the places we visited, there are no supermarkets like you imagine in Europe or North America. Sometimes we can buy fresh fruits and vegetables directly from vendors along the roads. Water is not a problem. We drink only bottled water when we are on the road, and that we can buy anywhere in either 2-liter bottles or 5 or 6-liter jugs. We keep separate the water that we use for washing ourselves and washing the dishes and what we call drinking water. So for dishes and stuff, we can take water from campgrounds or sometimes gas stations, wherever we find trusted water, but we avoid drinking it. Bread, unfortunately, is the biggest difficulty for us. At home I bake whole wheat organic sourdough bread that you've seen in the videos. We also buy from a couple of bakers that we trust, again sourdough bread. But as soon as we leave Mendoza, there's no such thing available, and the bread quality is extremely low. In the morning we like to have bread with butter and jam, and bread and cheese is also a common snack for us. Cheese is not a problem. Argentines eat cheese. There is a variety. Health-wise, the main challenge on the trip was the altitude. We were for several days regularly at more than 4,000 meters of altitude. We are used to camping and hiking at around 3,000 meters here in the province of Mendoza, so it is not as much of a challenge for us as it might be for other people, but still we did not only spend several days at higher than 4,000, but we camped. The first night we camped at high altitude, we were at 4,700. That was a challenge during the night. We were fine during the day. But overnight our stomach got bothered, and in the morning we were not feeling very well. Kathy has a nasty headache. So it's nice to be here, but I think we're gonna break camp and head down to lower altitude. So the truck is a Ford Ranger 2015 model, what I think is called the T6 model. My idea was always to keep it as close to stock as possible. So the engine is a 4-cylinder, 2.2 liter turbo diesel. No modifications at all to it. I just service it and maintain it religiously. The battery had been replaced a few months before we started the trip. And it's basically maintenance. You've seen me every night taking out the air filter, cleaning it, and then putting it back in. The recommended service period on this vehicle is 10,000 kilometers. So the air filter had 3,000 kilometers on it when we started the trip. Halfway through our trip, so 5,000 kilometers for the vehicle since the last service. I replaced the air filter with a new one that I had brought along. And so we did the second half of the trip on the brand new air filter. And I will have the truck serviced when we reach the 10,000 kilometers. Every night as well, I was checking belts, oil level, all the different fluid levels and stuff like that. Doing a visual check underneath, make sure we didn't hit anything. But other than that, nothing really. And this little engine has been great. I love it. We drove it again to close to 5,000 meters of altitude several times, and fully loaded. We were in four-wheel drive for several days. The mileage is excellent. I get on a trip like that an average of 10 liters per 100 kilometers, which converts to about 24, 25 miles per gallon. I'll put it on the screen. Now I think the most important modification to a four-wheel drive vehicle for any four-wheeling, but also and mostly for traveling in remote and harsh conditions, are the tires. The ones that the factory will put on the vehicle, brand new, are for mixed use and really more for highway and light gravel road driving and stuff. They won't last off-road in serious conditions. So these are Pirelli Scorpion MTR, which stands for mud terrain. Off-road tires are reinforced on top of the more aggressive tread for better traction. They also have more plies, and they're mostly reinforced on the sidewalls, which will prevent punctures from rocks and all kinds of things that you will encounter off-road. A question I get is, why did I get with Pirelli? They're not known for making off-road tires, but obviously they do. Here in Argentina, we do get BF Goodrich, and I had them on my vehicles in the early 80s. I had a Nissan pickup truck that we drove to North Africa. We did an expedition there. And I had the BFG's mud terrain, and they were an excellent tire back then, and I'm sure they're still excellent today. And I like the Pirellis. They're a good mud terrain. They are manufactured in Brazil, So they are imported into Argentina at a lower tax rate than the BFGs and other imported tires. So they're a little bit cheaper. They've been good to me. The stock tires we drove to Ushuaia and Tierra del Fuego 3 years ago. This is the proof. Stock tires, they were destroyed by volcanic rocks. We came back home, like I had to replace them, and I mounted these same sets. They're still on the truck. Since then we've driven here in the mountains, in the desert, numerous times. We did that trip to the Atacama on the Chilean side, to Bolivia and so on 2 years ago. We did this trip this year. We drove on the black volcanic rocks, white volcanic rocks, sand, all kinds of things, highway of course. They're showing now some signs of wear and tear, but they're still pretty good. They're one size up from stock. So stock, they're around 31-inch tall tires. These are very close to 32, which gives me a little bit of added ground clearance. I mounted them on the factory steel rims, and these stock rims, they're available, no trouble. I think they're the same bolt pattern and size than the Toyota Hilux, and probably other trucks as well. So even in a small town somewhere in the Atacama, I'm sure you can get them hammered back if they're dented, or they can easily source another one. There is a very small lift on this vehicle in the form of a coil spacer here, the red thing that you can see. This does lift the truck 4 centimeters, so not quite 2 inches. And at the rear, there's just a couple of lift blocks that raise the truck 3 centimeters. That way it looks level when loaded. Normally there is no roof rack available for single cab truck because you have the whole bed to carry stuff. This one is an off-the-shelf set of roof bars to which is bolted an off-the-shelf cross-the-bed rack. It has been modified with extra tubing, and on it I only carry a set of recovery boards and extra diesel. So the only issue we had really mechanically with the truck was this gas tank door, which would not open. It's released by the door release mechanism, so it's electronic, and there was just no way. And it turned out that it actually is this release mechanism. It's kind of a little plunger switch. And it turned out that a small rock, had been lodged inside here and was preventing the mechanism from going up. So as far as the camper itself, our living space, we really enjoyed it on this trip. Everything went really well, worked really well for us. It is nice to have a vehicle that is compact, can go pretty much anywhere, park in cities and towns and without drawing too much attention, and yet allows us to spend time inside. I can do some computer work, we can cook, we can take our meals. We can sleep, of course. We are sheltered from wind, rain, even the sun. In these areas, it really actually doesn't get hot during the day because of the altitude. So if you're sheltered from, shaded from the sun, the air itself is cool. So we can have our midday lunch inside the truck, we keep the windows open. The Laguna Carachipampa, the wind got so strong in the evening that we had to move the truck, and it was very nice to have a hard shell around us to protect us from the wind. Rain we didn't have to deal with on that trip, but it can happen too. This board goes in between, the table goes at the back, and the whole surface becomes a sleeping area, our bed, which is 150 centimeters wide, I think slightly bigger, but, and 190. The foam mattresses are high density foam in 4 pieces, so 3 crosswise, and a small one that fits the space to the left of the fridge. And we don't feel the joints in between, they feel really tight. At night in cold weather we use a downfield bed cover, and if necessary we have 2 fleece blankets. Sometimes we put one below and one on top, and we can sleep comfortably down to 15 degrees below freezing. And the furniture is all plywood, screwed and glued, and with all those strips nothing has come loose, like it's just as tight as it was on the first day. The fridge is a 48-liter compressor fridge with an ice-making compartment. Under the fridge we store the propane stove and food bins. Left of the fridge is the sink with an electric water pump and overhead LED light. The water is drawn from a 20-liter jug underneath the sink. And left of the sink we have some storage shelves. And at the bottom of the storage is the electric compartment. The electric system operates off 4 different sources, and it switches automatically. We can draw current from the engine battery, from the home battery of course. We can draw from solar power and from shore power as well. So overall the trip was a great success. I think it is the result of good planning and also good decisions during the trip, like turning around rather than pushing our luck. Keeping the truck close to factory specifications and well maintained in the end paid off as well. We carried all the equipment that we needed, some emergency and recovery gear as well. But we didn't carry any useless stuff, so we didn't overload the truck. This particular truck has a load carrying capacity of 1,200 kilos, more or less. And fully loaded, we're at slightly over 600, well within its payload specifications. So it was the second time that we visited the Atacama region. The first time 2 years ago we did the Chilean side up to Bolivia and Peru, and there are videos on that trip as well if you want to watch them. It's a region that I really love. There are amazing landscapes, some very unusual wildlife, and just a different feeling up there. You're so high up and in so remote areas that it leaves you a different feeling. I had the feeling a few times that maybe we followed the plan too rigidly. There are some spots where I wish we'd stayed longer and enjoyed more. Now that's easy to say once you're back in the comfort of your home. You quickly forget the conditions during the trip, the high altitude, the lack of oxygen, the difficulty in traveling, the uncertainty too of not knowing if the trail will actually take you where it is supposed to. You might have to turn around, change your plans. All this makes you maybe a little anxious to keep moving and reach some sort of safety, I guess. So I hope one day I'll return to the Atacama. It's a fascinating region, and hopefully I'll be able to enjoy it even more than I did this time. So until then, I thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in a future video. I hope you have a great day. I'll have to cut that. And okay, let's do it again.